Early in the morning, Joshua and all the Israelites set out from Shittim and went to the Jordan, where they camped before crossing over. So they're about to finally enter the land. Once they get past this Jordan River, they will finally be in the boundaries of the Promised Land. The boundaries of the Promised Land. After 3 days, the officers went throughout the camp, giving orders to the people. When you see the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord your God, and the priests who are Levites carrying it, you are to move out from your positions and follow it. Then you will know which way to go, since you have never been this way before. They haven't been in the land since Jacob and his family left, way back in the days of Joseph as Vizier of Egypt. What would that be, about 300 plus years earlier at this point? They had not been there since. But keep a distance of about 1,000 yards between you and the ark. Do not go near. That's quite a distance. That's 10 football fields. That's quite a distance. Do not go near it. Joshua told the people, consecrate yourselves. For tomorrow the Lord will do amazing things among you. Consecration would involve washing yourself and washing your clothes and abstaining from sex for the night. And the Lord said, Joshua said to the priests, take up the Ark of the Covenant and pass on ahead of the people. So they took it up and went ahead of them. And the Lord said to Joshua, today I will begin to exalt you in the eyes of all Israel, so they may know I am with you as I was with Moses. Tell the priests who carry the Ark of the Covenant, when you reach the edge of the Jordan's waters, go and stand in the river. They're going to have to walk into the Jordan River as it's flowing. That's a test of faith, a step of faith. Literally a leap of faith. They're going to have to walk right into the river as it's flowing, because trusting God to take care of them. Joshua said to the Israelites, come here and listen to the words of the Lord your God. This is how you will know that the Lord, living God, is among you, and that he will certainly drive out before you the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Hivites, the Perizzites, the Girgashites, the Amorites, and the Jebusites. See, the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord of all the earth will go into the Jordan ahead of you. Now then, choose 12 men from the tribes of Israel, one from each tribe. And as soon as the priests who carry the Ark of the Lord of all the earth, set foot in the Jordan, its waters flowing downstream will be cut off and stand in a heap. So God is once again going to part the waters of a river for the people to cross over. And previously he did it with the Red Sea. Now he's going to do it with the Jordan River. So when the people broke camp to cross the Jordan, the priests carrying the Ark of the Covenant went ahead of them. Now the Jordan is at flood stage all during harvest. So it's at a high level here. Yeah, so this is obviously during harvest. This would be the spring harvest, I believe. Because, well, we'll find out later. Yet as soon as the priests who carried the ark touched the Jordan and their feet touched the water's edge, the water from upstream stopped flowing. It piled up in a heap a great distance away at a town called Adam in the vicinity of Zarethan, while the water flowing down to the Sea of the Arabah, the Salt Sea, the Dead Sea, was completely cut off. So the people crossed over opposite Jericho. The priests who carried the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord stood firm on dry ground in the middle of the Jordan, while all Israel passed by, until the whole nation had completed the crossing on dry ground. So the priests went first, and as we saw a moment ago, they were about 1,000 yards ahead of the rest. They had to walk into the river as it was flowing, and when they did so, the river stopped flowing to create a path. Apparently they went about halfway across and then stopped, and then stood there and continued holding this thing on their shoulders, while all the people then followed them into the river and crossed through, passing by the priests as they went, and the priests were just standing there the whole time. Excuse me. Excuse me. When the whole nation had finished crossing the Jordan, the Lord said to Joshua, choose 12 men from among the people, one from each tribe. I already mentioned that earlier. We read about the choosing of the 12 men. We didn't read what they're for, though. And now I'm going to read what they're for. And tell them to take up 12 stones from the middle of the Jordan, from right where the priests stood, and to carry them over with you, and put them down at the place where you stay tonight. So there are apparently 12 large stones lying on the floor, the riverbed, lying on the floor of the river, that were been underwater, of course, until God parted the river, and now they're exposed. And they're supposed to pick these stones up and carry them. I don't know how heavy these stones would have been or how large. Apparently, each stone was carried by one man, so they're capable of being carried by one man in each. But so Joshua called together the 12 men he had appointed from the Israelites, one from each tribe, and said to them, "Go over before the ark of the Lord your God into the middle of the Jordan." You stop that. Yeah. Each of you is to take up a stone on his shoulder, according to the number of the tribes of the Israelites, so 12, to serve as a sign among you. In the future, when your children ask you, "What do these stones mean?" tell them that the flow of the Jordan was cut off before the ark of the covenant of the Lord. When it crossed the Jordan, the waters of the Jordan were cut off. These stones are to be a memorial to the people of Israel forever. So the Israelites did as Joshua commanded them. They took 12 stones in the middle of the Jordan, according to the number of the tribes of Israelites, as the Lord had told Joshua, and they carried them over with them to their camp, where they put them down. Joshua set up the 12 stones that had been in the middle of the Jordan, or another way of interpreting that sentence is Joshua also set up 12 stones. It's a little unclear whether it's 12 additional stones or the same 12 stones. It seems to make more sense to be the same 12 stones. Joshua set up the 12 stones that had been in the middle of the Jordan at the spot where the priests who carried the Ark of the Covenant had stood, and they are there to this day. Now, I don't know when this day is. Is this 2 years later? Is this 20 years later? Is this 200 years later? I don't know. Apparently, it's sometime afterwards. Either Joshua or one of the priests is writing this down, apparently sometime after it actually happened. But it's hard to say. It's impossible to say, really, exactly how long after. It could be Joshua in his old age and retirement, in peace, living in peace, writing these things down and adding them to the works of Moses as a story of how they finished getting into the land. It could be the priest who outlived him who did this, Phinehas, or one of the priests that outlived Joshua. I just don't know. Or it could be somebody else adding that note later on, at some other point in time, further down the road. Impossible to say. Now the priests who carried the ark remained standing in the middle of the Jordan until everything the Lord had commanded Joshua was done by the people, just as Moses had directed Joshua. The people hurried over, and as soon as all of them had crossed the ark of the Lord, and the priests came the other side And as soon as all of them had crossed, the ark of the Lord and the priests came to the other side while the people watched. The priests were the first ones into the river, but the last ones out. Apparently they went about halfway into the river and stopped, and then the people started going through, and the priests stayed there, and some of them, 12 of those men, picked up these stones and carried them as they went. And then the priests stayed there until all the people had finished crossing over, and the priests continued walking. The men of Reuben, Gad, and the half tribe of Manasseh crossed over, armed, in front of the Israelites, as Moses had directed them. So they're going to go out first. About 40,000, armed for battle, crossed over before the Lord to the plains of Jericho for war. That day the Lord exalted Joshua in the sight of all Israel, and they revered him all the days of his life, just as they had revered Moses. There's another indication that this is being written down after the events themselves occur. And then either Joshua, in his old age and retirement, near the end of his life, is writing these things down, or someone close to him, like the priest at the time, is writing them down, or someone just after him is writing them down, or Joshua wrote them down and someone else added them slightly later. Who knows? It's impossible to discern exactly how that happened. We should be aware of the possibilities, But we cannot be too dogmatic about exactly what happened because we don't know. Then the Lord said to Joshua, "Command the priests carrying the ark of the testimony to come up out of the Jordan." So Joshua commanded the priests, "Come up out of the Jordan." And the priests came up out of the river, carrying the ark of the covenant of the Lord. No sooner had they set their feet on the dry ground than the waters of the Jordan returned to their place and ran at flood stage as before. On the 10th day of the first month, so this is now the springtime year, we talked about the harvest. This is the spring harvest. This would be the runoff. The Jordan would be at flood stage during this time because of the runoff of all the rainwater they had had. I'm not sure how much snow or ice they get in some of the mountain regions here, but that the Jordan is at flood stage here during this time, and this is in the spring. We know this because this is the first month, which is our March, April. On the 10th day of the first month, the people went up from the Jordan and camped at Gilgal on the eastern border of Jericho. So they are now in the land. They have finally, after all this time, re-entered the promised land. For the first time since Jacob's family left to go down to Egypt, they are the children of God are now back in the promised land. And Joshua set up at Gilgal the 12 stones they had taken out of the Jordan. He said to the Israelites, "In the future, when your descendants ask their fathers, 'What do these stones mean?' tell them, 'Israel crossed the Jordan on dry ground. For the Lord your God dried up the Jordan before you until you had crossed over. The Lord your God did to the Jordan just what he had done to the Red Sea, when he dried it up before us until we had crossed over. He did this that all the peoples of the earth might know that the hand of the Lord is powerful, and so that you might always fear the Lord your God.'" So these things were done specifically to convince people that Israel's God is the God. It worked on Rahab and her family. I think it worked on Job as well, living in Edom sometime around this time. But that was the point of these miracles. The whole point of them was to demonstrate that Israel's God was real and powerful.